Hello developers, testers, and everyone who loves game design.
Welcome to Studio Blues Podcast, DLC Not Included.
We are your hosts, Steele
And Teal.
Our podcast discusses game development and industry topics
In a relaxed fireside chat type of manner.
So, a little bit about us and where we're from. I've been working in the video game industry for about 15 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a professional writer for about as long, and I've been a published author since 2012.
I've been doing level design for over 10 years. That includes modding, NPC and AI scripting, and of course lighting.
Absolutely. We received some really strong, positive feedback from our last podcast, and we believe we found our rhythm. So we're ready to go forward and hit a topic that's very important for developers and players alike.
And that is constructive criticism.
That's right. We are going to take a look at both receiving and giving feedback and criticism
from both a peer standpoint and a player standpoint.
Because both are important, especially in a community where everyone should be upholding and uplifting each other.
Yeah, I agree.
We're going to tackle receiving feedback first, because in our experience working as LPers, that is, people who do Let's Plays, we've noticed that spectrum of people who watch our videos and submit projects to us go from very professional to not so much.
Right. So there's an art form to this, but also a method.
There is, and the method is by no means exhaustive, but we're going to give you sort of the, I don't want to say list, but sort of the methodology we use that works for us and we found is the most effective.
Right. So the first thing you want to do is make sure your project is ready for feedback.
Absolutely, and this can be a showstopper on many levels.
Yeah, it sure can.
There have been a number of projects that Teal and I have critiqued that have obviously not been ready.
Oh, yeah.
Either they were in a early alpha build where no story had been created, or there were a lot of grammatical mistakes, or it was very obvious that this was a draft.
Right, right. So it should go without saying that you need to submit a project that is ready for critiquing and for feedback, that you've tightened it all up and, well, what can I say? You're ready to submit it.
Exactly.
You know, a beta.
Yeah, you're past the point where you have created your gameplay, you're past the point where you've injected your story and your characters, and you have something that will resemble a finished product.
Right. So make sure you are submitting what we call a beta.
Right.
So that brings us to our next point, is separate yourself from your project.
Absolutely, and that can be one of the hardest things.
It sure can. You know, when you've put your heart and soul into something, it's a part of you. And it does feel like an attack when somebody criticizes your work.
Exactly. There have been many times where people have reacted in a way as if Teal and I are directly attacking them as developers. And that's never the case.
No, that's not the case. When someone gives you feedback, they are literally just talking about the project, what they see, what they experience. It has nothing to do with you and your like or dislike of chickens.
Exactly.
Okay, seriously.
Seriously. Yes, and we've seen that even on our Discord channel, where people have literally attacked themselves because their work has been criticized. And it makes us sad. It makes us feel a lot of sorrow because it's never the person, it's always the project. The person is represented by how they are perceived to receiving the feedback. People are definitely going to note how you react to criticism.
That is the key right there. To kind of summarize what Steele is saying, separate yourself from your work. Because at the end of the day, it isn't about you. It's about this project and making it the best it can be and something that people are going to want to play and enjoy playing.
And that leads us to our next point, which accept that you need the feedback and that the peer is reliable.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really important because anyone who thinks that their work doesn't need to improve really has no business being a developer. And I know that sounds like an attack, but it's a inconvenient truth.
Yes, it is. Everybody needs to have feedback. Everybody needs their work to be reviewed and critiqued. It's like having another pair of eyes look at your work and tell you the things that you missed.
Exactly. There's no one project that's so perfect, and nothing in the world sets me on fire more than when a developer is looking for feedback, and I say that with air quotes, but really all they want is either validation or bug testing, and that's not what a peer review is. If you want a bug tester, hire a bug tester.
Yes, please.
When you approach someone for peer review, for feedback, for criticism, you're asking them to look at the work as a whole and say how it can improve.
Yes.
So how do you do that, Teal? How do you receive the feedback well?
I cannot emphasize this enough. Active listening, okay? And what I mean by active listening is open your ears and close your mouth. That is the best way I can put that.
It is very true. And this is whether or not you're receiving it face-to-face, voice-to-voice, or over text. Do not spend time formulating your response. And this really goes beyond just criticism and feedback. This is like in everyday life. When Teal and I talk to each other, the other one shuts up and spends time listening instead of figuring out what we're going to say in response.
That's it.
And I can't tell you how many times on a negative level that we have been talking to somebody on either our Discord server or private message, and it's very obvious that while we're typing, they're typing their next response, we're typing over each other, and all they're doing is trying to rebuttal us. They're not listening to us.
And so that's completely ineffective, and you just invalidated the entire process. Thank you for playing. I mean, seriously, that defeats the whole purpose of collecting feedback from folks. You've got to actively listen, take in the points that they are making, check your understanding. That's all part of active listening.
Yeah.
If you feel that you don't quite understand what the person's saying, circle back and ask them to clarify. Oh, you heard this and such. Is that what they were trying to say? You really need to focus on what they're saying.
You really do. After you're done actively listening, summarize what they've said. Not only does this show them that you were listening, but it makes sure there's no miscommunication. This is also the time when you want to clarify, isn't it, Teal?
Yes, it is. If you don't understand something, say so. Ask them to clarify. Ask for examples. This is your chance to get all the points from your critiquer that you need in order to improve your work. This is your shot. Don't waste it.
Agreed. And after that is done, after every point has been clarified and a summary has been given, so that your critiquer knows that you're listening, thank them.
Absolutely. They're taking the time out of their day to do this for you. So show some gratitude. Thank them.
Absolutely. Now, the next point is a little bit sticky because we don't want people to use this as a crutch to discard feedback. But this is important, and that is check the feedback against other peers. What one person says isn't necessarily going to be what another says. That doesn't mean that the first person was unreliable. It just means that that particular point that they're critiquing may not be as big of an issue as they're making it out to be in the overall, even though it's a big issue to them. You're not discounting them.
No, you're not.
You're finding out exactly how much it is. So if one person says a feature in your game is bad, like let's say using an item to power up your character.
Right.
That's one thing. But what if 3 people say it?
If 3 people say it, 4, 5, that is a problem. You want to focus on that. That is an issue that needs immediate addressing.
Yes, I want to cite the example of my writing critique group that I've been a part of about as long as I've been published.
I think so, many years.
And we all sit around, and if a particular hard point comes up, especially a point that's going to force me to do a significant rewrite, I will actually poll the group and say, do you agree with this person that this is a big issue? And I will get the other people to give yays or nays and why they feel that way.
Yeah.
I'm not asking to validate or to invalidate this person. I want to gauge on a level against other people how big of an issue it actually is. And there have been times that some of the feedback that I have both given and received has been shown to be in a minority as opposed to a majority of people who I respect.
Yes.
Therefore, I'm like, okay, I really don't need to focus on this as much, but I still need to pay attention. Or, this is a bigger issue than I thought. Absolutely deal with it. Now, notice in all of these that we've gone so far, at no point have we said defend and excuse your work.
Right. That is out the window.
Yes.
Because it undermines your credibility and it shows that you're just not listening.
And once you get the reputation, especially in a smaller community, of being someone who does not listen to feedback, you're done.
Nobody is going to try to help you.
They're just going to smile and say, good luck with that, and move on to someone who will actually listen.
Yep. So your work is never going to get a chance to improve.
Yeah, and that's bad.
Yeah.
So finally, we come to the last point, which is, and this is huge,
Yeah.
at a later date, determine what you can and cannot use.
It's so very important to give yourself some time, a couple of days, a week, to gather and digest the feedback and then take a step back from it. No, you're not going to be able to use every single criticism.
Right.
Okay. And that's understandable. That's expected. But you do need to, at the very end, incorporate the main things that people were telling you into improving your work. The best way to do that is take a step back so that you can be more objective. Okay.
That heat of the moment is your worst enemy in receiving criticism. It really is. That knee-jerk reaction of, oh my God, what's wrong with my project now?
As we talked about before, the defensiveness.
Right.
Okay. My project, me. No.
Exactly. So, as Teal was saying, take a step back. I usually give myself, I would say 4 days to maybe a week.
I think so.
Between critique sessions of my work before I really start working on it. I'll revisit it after about 3 days, look over it again, see if anything still makes me feel kind of heated or not, depending on how emotional the feedback was.
Right.
But then after a while, I'll look at it, I'll feel more objective, and I'll say, okay, how can I use this to make my work even better? Well, the same thing holds true for game development.
Absolutely. You give yourself some time to process the feedback so that you can approach this with a fresh objectivity with the intent to improve your work. Because that's the whole point of this exercise in the first place, is improving your work, your gaming project.
Absolutely. I want to share a very quick story that I feel is important because there's no time scale on this.
Yeah.
I created a manuscript many years ago and sent it off to one of my mentors. And my mentor's feedback was very strong. I wouldn't say harsh, but she did not pull any punches.
Nope.
And I put that project aside for about 2 years because I would still have a reaction looking at it because I put so much work into it. Time later, I'm ready to tackle this thing again. I feel fantastic. I'm all positive about it. So if you need to shelve something for a while because the project is so viscerally ripped apart in a constructive manner,
right,
do so. There's nothing wrong with that. You're only on a timetable if you put yourself on one or if you have an investor waiting for a return.
Right. Which you probably shouldn't get investors involved until you've got a thoroughly critiqued beta to release anyway.
I agree.
Just saying.
Yes. Okay, so that's for receiving peer criticism.
Right.
The game changes completely if it's receiving player criticism.
Right. The main thing to remember when receiving player feedback is to be approachable. You want to project an attitude, a persona of being someone that can be approached.
Absolutely.
I just don't know what else to say about it.
If players feel that they can't approach a developer, they're going to just give a negative review, say this game is crap, and move on.
Yep.
And by the way, you are going to have people give you those 1-star reviews, those not recommendeds on Steam, and they're going to say this game is shite and this person should shoot themselves. Those are trolls or people who just don't know how to criticize.
Sure.
Forget it. It stings. It hurts. Move on. because these people can offer nothing that can improve either you or your project. It's okay to reach out to them and ask for actual feedback, but don't press the issue. And for God's sakes, don't fight them.
You want to project this attitude of being approachable so that those people who do take the time to give you an honest assessment of their play experience will feel rewarded in doing so, will feel safe in doing so.
Absolutely.
You want that type of feedback.
Yes.
Okay? You sift through all the coal to find the diamonds.
Absolutely.
Okay? You're approachable because you want these diamonds.
Absolutely. So the methodology behind accepting player feedback is extremely short, and I'll just go right through it.
Yeah, just go through it.
Step 1, be approachable like Teal said. Step 2, show appreciation, ask for clarification only if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Step 3, thank them. Step 4, shut the hell up.
Yeah.
And step 5, digest later. That's it.
That's it. It's very simple.
Don't go back and forth with them. You definitely don't rebut them.
Oh, God.
You do not attack them.
Do not argue.
Do not argue with a player ever. Just do those steps and move on.
And that's it. Pretty simple, huh?
So that's receiving feedback. Now we're going to move on to the art form of giving feedback.
And the easiest place to start with giving feedback is as a player of somebody's work.
Right. Go ahead, Teal. Let's just tell them how we recommend a player give feedback.
Okay, here you go. State what you liked and didn't like about the game. Cite specific examples of likes and dislikes. Be succinct and be respectful.
Pretty much, and that's pretty much it. When you're creating a player review of a game, all the developer needs to know is those points that Teal just mentioned. Mm-hmm. If you want to bring in the emotion that it made you feel, that's fantastic. That shows them those examples.
Sure.
And if they ask you for clarification, go ahead and give it.
Right.
But the most helpful player reviews are the ones that touch on the points Teal brought up. It's wonderful to have a player say, this game made me laugh, this game made me cry, but you can't take that and make yourself a better developer with it.
No, you can't.
You just pat yourself on the back and say, go me.
So if this game made me laugh when this happened, and this happened. This game made me cry when this scene occurred. That's what I mean by citing examples. Being succinct means keeping it short and to the point. No one wants to be subjected to someone's rambling story about how this reminded them of their grandmother's eggs, and then they go on to a story about how wonderful those eggs were and how many eggs you had for breakfast when you were 7. You think I'm kidding? I have seen feedback like that.
Exactly. I have both with my written works and with games projects that I've been a part of seen paragraph after paragraph long reviews that don't really add any value because they're only touching upon maybe 2 or 3 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's not really helpful. So players can do what they will. We're not telling players what they can and cannot do, but if there's players listening to this podcast, please remember that the best way to help a developer is to be succinct, cite examples, and move on.
And just move on, okay? We're all friends here. Just move on.
Now, if you're giving a peer critique, which is what Studio Blue does with its LPs and what a lot of people in the community do, the rules change significantly.
Yes. The first thing that you need to do if you're going to give a peer review is you need to establish your rapport within the community and its members. Is being someone who is reliable and respectful.
Absolutely. People don't come to people who are jackasses.
Plain and simple.
It's also important to remember that this project is something that someone has poured their heart into.
Something that a person has spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of resources on. They've given themselves to this project. So that should guide your own behavior in being a professional, courteous, and respectful person.
Absolutely. Every single one of our Let's Plays are designed to help that developer make their game better. Every single critique you need to give needs to be designed to help make that project better. I have personally seen on other servers, not the Studio Blue server, thank goodness, people who attack other people's project and say, I don't like it or it's shit. I even had the horrible mispleasure once of watching, and this was both ways for both the critiquer and the receiver, a critiquer break down and basically at the end tell the person they were critiquing, you need to quit game design and never design again.
Ouch!
Having said that, the receiver was rebutting everything that the critiquer said.
Being a basic jackass.
Right, so the whole thing broke down.
Ooh, yeah.
But, yeah, so just remember there's a person on the other end of the keyboard who put time and effort into something, and how would you want to be treated? You know, follow the golden rule.
Right.
Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you.
So, yeah, so just keep that in mind when you're giving your critique.
Absolutely. And that moves over to this next point, which is just as important. Consider the time and place of your feedback.
Yes, that does tie back in with being respectful. Your choice of time and place is so very important.
Yes.
For example, you're not going to give feedback on a server where people are jerks.
Exactly. If it's a place where people are just messing around, acting like jackasses, that's not the place to say, hey developer, I played your game and here are my thoughts. Because every jackass is going to jump on the jackass train.
Yes.
And the next thing you know, you've got the Encyclopedia Dramatica IRC chat.
Thank you.
I mean, it's just, it turns into a poisonous, toxic environment very quickly. LPs, Let's Plays, are a good example of how to do it properly because it's an environment where the critiquer is directly speaking to the developer.
Yes.
The fact that other people are watching is part of the entertainment value and why the phenomena of Let's Plays are so explosively popular. But if you're giving private feedback, give it to them privately or give it to them on a server or an environment where people are going to be respectful. Now, giving constructive criticism during a live stream has its own sets of pros and cons. For example, during a live stream, the developer can be present, can ask questions of the critiquer, offer clarification, and get a better understanding in real time. Plus, the other participants can offer sort of a crowdsource of ideas that can help both get over the humps and offer perspectives the critiquer may or may not give. Those are the good points.
Unfortunately, there are some pretty significant cons to this as well. You'll have to contend with trolls. You'll have to contend with people making jokes or side comments. And of course, there's always the noise.
Absolutely. So just like finding the right platform with LPs and chat programs, it's finding the right live streams. Fortunately, we know a couple of real good ones, and we can always recommend them.
Sure.
We recommend Driftwood Gaming and Hawk Zombie. Those are great live stream critiquers. Okay, so when you're actually creating the feedback, there are a number of methods you can use for its delivery. But there's one method that Teal and I have started employing that we find to be very useful.
And that's what we call the sandwich method. You start off with something positive, then you get to the critical points, and then you finish on a positive note.
And we've started following that format for the written part of our Let's Play summaries, where we'll start off with the positives, then we'll go into all the critical points,
right,
and then we'll end with something positive and a call to action by the community to assist the developer and make the developer's game even better. Now, the next part is really important.
When you give your feedback, both positive and critical, you want to cite specific examples. If a scene doesn't work, tell them why. If a character is acting out of character, give them at least 3 instances of the character behaving out of character.
Yeah, and if a level isn't working, if the critical path isn't easy to find, or if there's design issues that are stopping the gameplay loop from being followed, cite those. Never just say, this isn't working. Always say, this isn't working because.
Because.
Absolutely. And this goes hand in hand with the next point, which is be firm and fair and choose quality over quantity. You don't want to come across as a pushover who the developer can shout down and convince is wrong.
Because at that point, you just defeated the whole purpose of giving feedback. And of course, made yourself look unreliable because you can be easily influenced one way or the other. So, nix that. And as far as quality over quantity, who in their right mind wants to be inundated with 12 or 14 different criticisms? Wow, you'll overwhelm somebody with that.
Yeah, I find it to be better to say, characterization's bad. Here's the examples. Level design ain't so great. Here's the example. Instead of harping on that point of the level design's bad here and here and here and here and here, I'd rather pick the point where the level design needs the most work, and cite that as my example of where the level design needs improvement. It's going to trickle down to every other aspect. And if they want to know, hey, can you tell me every place my level design is deficient, they'll ask.
Yeah, another example of putting quantity over quality is listing every single beef you have. I didn't like the color red. I didn't like the way this character acted. I didn't like the cooking system. I think the draw system sucks. I didn't like this. I didn't like that. I didn't like this. That is unhelpful.
It is. Laundry lists are overwhelming and is a great way to, despite everything we mentioned earlier, make a developer feel like they should just quit.
Yep.
Quality over quantity shows that not only are you picking the parts that need help the most, but it's trusting that the developer can take that and say, okay, here's a big issue. Let me apply that to the rest of my project, learning what I learned from this one piece of criticism.
Right. It's actually a good feedback loop.
It is.
Kind of
It's
deal.
really good.
Yeah. The next point follows closely on the heels of how you deliver your feedback, and that is offer suggestions for improvement.
Absolutely. A good critiquer will offer quality, example-cited feedback on where a project needs to be improved. A great critiquer will offer suggestions, even if they can't be used, on how to do it. And here's the reason why. When a developer sees a good potential suggestion to a problem, even if they can't use it, it will spark their creativity. On how they can take that and say, well, I can't use that, but I can use something similar.
And that sets up a win-win situation between the critiquer and the developer.
Absolutely. The critiquer feels like they didn't waste their time and they've actually helped the developer, and the developer feels like they had some measure of control over how their project was improved.
Yes, exactly.
So that kind of brings us back to the beginning, doesn't it?
It does. As I said, this is like a 360 feedback loop.
Yeah.
So, yes, it brings you back to the beginning of building rapport, establishing your reputation as someone reliable that can give constructive feedback. Establish your reputation as a developer, as somebody who can receive feedback, who appreciates it. It is definitely a loop.
Exactly. And if you are a Let's Player, a public face, once you have established your reliability and your professionalism as a critiquer in the community, you can then start working on your personality and making your videos more entertaining. And we could do an entirely separate podcast on Let's Play videos.
But the important thing is, if you are an LPer, then you're going to get more solicitations for your advice. And that builds your street cred with the community. You're someone reliable that is out there to help improve others.
Exactly. And you're also entertaining because once you've established that street cred, you've started interjecting your persona into things that people actually want to watch. If you go back and look at our earlier videos, we are very controlled and measured in how we react to everything.
Yes.
Now that we've found our groove and people know, hey, despite the Steele rants and the Teal laughs, we are going to give you good advice, we can now be more personality based.
Right.
So take your time and build up your street cred. Like I said, we could do an entire podcast on how to be a good Let's Player.
But the point of this podcast is to focus on giving and receiving critical feedback.
Absolutely. And hopefully this has been helpful. This is one of those things that Teal and I feel very passionately about being done correctly on both ends.
Because better developers and better critiquers lead to better games, and it overall raises the bar on the entire community, and everyone wins.
Everyone wins. I do want to end this whole thing with a note that it is ultimately up to the developer as to what critical feedback they want to implement.
Sure.
It is, in the end, their project. A developer disregards critical feedback at their own peril, but the developer has to know what's best for their project, and that's part of the learning process.
It is.
A project may have a problem once it's gone gold, and players may land blast something that a critiquer brought up, and then the developer can grow as a developer and go, hey, I probably should have listened to that point. Everyone has to stumble before they walk.
So don't think of a mixed review of your game as utter failure, I'm going to quit.
Right.
It is, as Steele said, a learning experience, and you can incorporate that experience into your future projects and make even better projects.
Absolutely. So we'd like to hear your thoughts on this, whether it be on the Discord server or in the comment section of YouTube or private messages. What do you feel about feedback and criticism? Is there something we missed? Do you feel that there's ways that it can be done better?
Sure.
We always like hearing back from the community, so please keep it coming. Give us feedback on giving you feedback. Thank you so much for stopping by and listening today. Join us next time on DLC Not Included. And remember,
anyone can give you the key, but you have to go through the door.